by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Sunday, August 25th, and you are listening to episode 223 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for planet-side news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So what's been going on with me? Well, today is actually my daughter's day to return to college, so going to be a little shorter show than usual this week just because I'm exhausted from taking her back to college. And anyone out there who is attending or has gone to college or has children in college understands the move-in days are usually very hectic, and yeah, that was today. My daughter is attending college at the University of New Hampshire. If any of my listeners are UNH alums or students, let me know. It would be cool. That's basically all. So again, a little bit shorter of a show this week. Just going to do 2 quick topics and leave it at that, plus some listener email. So yeah, what's in store for this week's show? Well, first, I have a August 23rd PTS update that I want to cover with just a few small things on it. But then after that, I'm going to dedicate the majority of the show this week to talking about the upcoming Briggs merger, which I don't know how I feel about it yet, but we'll certainly talk about it on this week's show. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So like I said, the first topic this week is the August 23rd PTS update, and not a lot involved with this. Starting though with the Prowler, the Rampart Defense mesh has been refunded and removed from the PTS. And if you don't remember what that is, well, that came back on the March 15th PTS update. The Rampart Defense Mesh for the Prowler was going to be a defensive slot item that was going to generate a shield layer on the Prowler that increased its effective health when the shield's downtime was fully depleted and regeneration is paused for a brief period whenever damage is taken. If it undeploys, the shield's immediately removed. Redeploying will require the shield to regenerate from 0 again, and each rank of the cert line will increase the regeneration rate per second of the shield layer. So that has been scrapped altogether and is being replaced by something called the Rampart Projector. It's still going to be a defensive slot item, and while deployed, the Prowler will receive increased front armor and will project a hard light barrier forward to shield allied infantry. Now, the barrier is tied directly to the Prowler's health pool, and damage to the barrier will also damage the Prowler. At the first rank of this, you're going to get 10% additional front armor as well. At rank 2, 15% additional. At rank 3, 17.5% additional. And at max rank 4, you'll get 20% additional front armor. This is kind of interesting, when you think about it, because if it's going to project a barrier out in front that infantry are going to be able to hide behind. I'm concerned that that barrier is tied to the Prowler's health pool, and as a result, any damage that barrier takes, the Prowler is going to take as well. I'm a little concerned that most people will not even consider using this because of that. What's the point of throwing a barrier out there if you're still going to take damage from it, even if it's hit? So I'm not sure how I feel about this one. Unlike the Vanguard's main ability, when they pop their shield, they're not taking any damage while that shield's up. I think it might be a mistake for the Rampart Projector to, deal damage to the Prowler itself. Granted, it's going to have additional front armor, so it's going to help the Prowler themselves, but I almost wish that this would just project a hard light barrier out in front. And then maybe if the prowler moves or anything like that, it disappears. That might make a little more sense to me than what they're doing with this. But again, this is something that is on the PTS, and obviously they want you and I to go out there and test it and provide feedback on it. So in addition to this, there were just some other miscellaneous changes, fixes, and additions. They've changed the model for the stealth attachment visuals on the Flash and Harasser. The Lightning's engagement radar attachment now uses the correct UI camera. NSO characters can no longer lock onto allied vehicles. That was one where I saw last week somebody was posting that they were able to lock on and damage friendly vehicles without having any repercussions for that, besides destroying a friendly vehicle. But there was no weapons lock tied to it, so it's good to see that the devs are tracking this one down and getting rid of that one. Again, though, these are only on the PTS. That stuff's still live. Next, hard light barriers now have a slightly larger exclusion radius to prevent barrier stacking, which certainly could be an issue with the folks that I run with, since we do like to stack barriers around our routers, because it's much easier to block grenades when you've got hard light barriers surrounding your router pad. So I don't know that I like this stacking. It was already tough to get them close, so I'm concerned that now it's going to be even tougher to fully protect a router. Next, though, the construction ammo tower ability has been disabled for the time being. I would assume that it's probably due to some way of stat padding or something like that. They've also made some minor modifications to the death camera's highlighting and panning. They also darkened the UI background for the death screen. They removed that. And finally, the Vanguard's forward shield visuals have been adjusted. And I wonder if that's in a reaction to this new Rampart projector or not. But that was the entire PTS update altogether. Not a lot there, but if you're curious about playing with a new defense slot on the Prowler, you can go and check out that Rampart projector. Those other miscellaneous changes, fixes, and additions, I wouldn't be surprised if we see those in a game update in the next week or so, just to get that stuff out to live. But with that, let's move on to our second and I think most important topic this week. That second topic, like I said at the beginning of the show, is the upcoming Briggs merger. And this kind of came out of the blue. I will say that when I was at Daybreak Games, I didn't specifically ask if Briggs was going to be, closed or anything like that. But I do recall us having a conversation about the population size of Briggs. So even I was surprised when this notice came across. And I'm just going to read this notice directly to you. So, and this is from Nick Silva. He says, at 6 a.m. Pacific on August 27th, the Briggs server, so 6 a.m. Pacific, August 27th, that's Tuesday night. Oh, Tuesday morning, I'm sorry. So the Briggs server is going to be merged with the Soltech server. And all characters currently associated with Briggs will become Soltech characters. That same morning, we will be opening a character transfer window between the Soltech and Connery servers. The window will stay open until the end of September. That would be September 30th, 2019, at 11:59 p.m. Pacific. He goes on to say that merging the Briggs server was not a decision we came to easily, and we hope the Briggs players this merge is affecting will understand why this has to happen. The reason being the population of players on Briggs is not able to sustain the cost of continuing to operate in that region. We appreciate the support the game has received from all of the Briggs players and hope they will continue to play PlanetSide 2 on either Soltech or Connery servers for the foreseeable future. Our apologies if this announcement seems a bit late. We spent a very long time weighing all our options as to how best to proceed. A small note on character transfers. We recommend you wait at least 10 minutes after ending a game session with a character before performing a server transfer of a character between Soltech and Connery. This should prevent any lost progress, such as XP insert gain from your previous game session. And that's the entire announcement completely. So yeah, basically on the 27th, which is as of this recording 2 days, but as of most of you are listening to this, it's going to be the next day. Briggs is going to be merged into the Soltech server. Briggs will no longer continue to exist. And obviously, they say the reason is because the population on Briggs is not able to sustain the cost of operating in that region. And of course, when we look at, well, what do I like using Fizzu, and I don't know how perfect these stats are or anything like that, but in the last 30 days, their 24-hour peak on Briggs is 118 players. That's absolutely minuscule, and it only bumped up, and I mean it's been going. Let's see. When did the actual New Soldier update come out for PC? If we look back here, the New Soldier update came out in April 25th of this year. Briggs population in March was 139. In April, it was 145. In May, it was 198. And then it's been slowly dropping from there. When we look at another server, like let's just pick Connery as an example, looking at it in that exact same time frame, in April, they were at 851. In May, they were over 1,100. If you look at somebody like Miller as an example as well, in April they were at 1,300. In May they were at 1,600. So Emerald, the one that I play on the majority, went from 1,700 in April to over 2,000 in May. So Briggs getting the minuscule bump that it did, and I'm sorry, Briggs, the minuscule bump that they did from April to May, which was less than 50 players, means that really it was not sustainable for Briggs. And when we look at Soltech as an example, in April they had 1,000 players. They actually dropped in May, but in the last 30 days they've still been over 1,000 players on the Soltech server. So if Briggs players get a decent ping on Soltech, which I don't even know if that's the case. From everything that I read, I obviously I don't play on Briggs, but things that I've been reading are saying that the ping is better for folks on Connery, and obviously that's the reason why Daybreak Games is allowing Soltech players to move from Soltech to Connery. Because again, Connery, you're still at 800 or some odd players during peak time recently. If you get a bunch of Briggs refugees over there, maybe you could get closer to 1,000 as a peak time. I'm really not sure. But clearly, looking at the numbers, and I even said, and looking at Briggs right now in Fizzu, playing 52 minutes ago, 0 players. Granted, it's probably the middle of the night for Australia, so it's probably not the best time to be looking at stats for them. But I mean, even Miller, 294 players right now. Soltech even has 23 people on. It's not a ton. But clearly, Briggs had to go, and I hate to say that because I know there's a lot of people, not a lot of people, but there's some of you out there who play on Briggs and were happy with your server, even though it was tiny. I saw somebody was posting saying, the good thing about playing on Briggs, it was always a small fight everywhere you went. So there was always coordination, there was always flanking, there was always good combat that happened with those small fights that you don't get on some of these larger servers. But when you've got a massively multiplayer game like PlanetSide 2, having less than 200 players on during a peak time frame, that's not really massively multiplayer when you actually get down to brass tacks on it. So I'm not happy, I guess, that Daybreak Games made the decision that they did to pull the plug on Briggs or to pull the plug on Briggs in the next day or so. I do think that it is the correct move for them to make. there's no reason to continue to pay server costs if clearly the number of people there is not supporting those server costs. I don't know how much it costs to run a server, but obviously 200 players worth or less than 200 players does not make it feasible or worthwhile monetarily to continue to run a server in that region. So it's a cost-cutting move for Daybreak Games, and if it's not, making them money, then they should cut something like that. And it's not like they're just shutting the game off and not allowing the folks from Briggs anywhere to go. Again, they're automatically going to be merged over to Soltech at 6 a.m. Pacific on August 27th. But they're still offering transfers from Soltech to Connery, even to existing people on Soltech right now. If you're on Soltech and have always wanted to move one of your characters to Connery, you're going to be able to, and you're basically going to have over a month to make that ultimate decision. So the Briggs players are going to have that chance to log in, play on Soltech, see if it works for them, and if it doesn't, make a move over to Connery itself. Now, one other thing I did want to talk about is because it seems like a few people out there are pretty gung-ho about giving Briggs a proper finale, and this was a post by OpsHacks that he put on Reddit saying that they want to make a Briggs Soltex merger smash, but obviously that's not going to happen because there's not enough time. So the goal right now is at 9 p.m. Pacific on the 26th, and let me convert that for a few of you. So looking at this, 9 p.m. Pacific is obviously midnight Eastern time for those on the East Coast. For UTC, it's 4 a.m. For London, it's 5 a.m., which these time zones kind of suck if you're in the EU, but I think this was more so US and Australia can kind of figure everything out, because in Australia, it's 2 p.m., which is probably a great time for them. China's 12 is noon, Japan's 1. So certainly anybody who's on the Soltech server can go and certainly play at that time zone as well. But again, this is more, it feels like it's more being driven towards the US and Australian time zones more than anything else. I mean, if you're in Russia, it's 7 a.m. at that time, so maybe some of the Miller folks can go and play in it. But for most of Europe, it's 5, 6, 7 a.m. in the morning. Maybe some of you will get up to help play around with Briggs as well and give them that proper send-off that they deserve. But certainly right now, you should be marking your calendar, and obviously before 9 p.m. Pacific, you should get online and try to get everybody that you know over on Briggs so that they can take part in this as well. I know it's midnight for me, but I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be playing WoW Classic that night anyways, so I'm sure that I will be up anyways, and I definitely plan to set my clock for midnight to at least play for maybe a half hour or something, just to get some time to give Briggs the proper send-off that it deserves. And again, it's sad that it's come down to this, but I do think for Daybreak Games that this is the correct decision. If you have an underperforming server in a particular region, you should shut it down and focus your efforts on the servers that obviously are bringing in the players and potentially are monetarily good for you compared to the other ones. Again, the TLDR on that is, man, this sucks, but unfortunately, it's the proper way to go. And with that, again, mark your calendars for that. I'll tweet about it as well, so you guys are aware of it also, to make sure to get as many of you guys on as possible. Know that I will be there. Come and find me on Briggs. But with that, let's move on, because like I said, shorter show this week. Let's move on to housekeeping, because I did receive an email this week.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
All right, and that email I received was from Survive7, and he wrote, "Hey Derringer, I'm Survive7 on Reddit, and I had a suggestion for the show that might be worthwhile. I haven't listened in a while because I thought PS2 on PS4 was a lost cause, but the recent update brought me back, so I apologize if this is already something you've tried." What is that thing? He writes, community interviews, reaching out to players in the community who are willing to talk about their experience playing PlanetSide, what they enjoy, what they get out of the experience, some things they tweak about it, what their experience is playing other similar games, advice for players, squads, platoons, and anything else you'd like to ask about. It wouldn't have to just be high-level players. You could reach out to new players and get their fresh perspective on everything, generally keeping a positive tone to the conversation overall. You could let players who agree to interviews a chance to promote their outfits as a recruitment tool. A potentially added benefit would be bringing the community together. PlanetSide can make players really bitter at certain factions or outfits, but if we got to listen to players being more than an avatar on a screen, it might humanize our adversaries and make it more fun for all of us. Good luck with whatever you decide, and keep hitting that join combat button. First off, Survive7, thank you for the email. I'm glad to hear that you're back, especially after the last update. I've been playing a bit on PS4, and it certainly is a completely different game than it used to be. So I'm not surprised that you're back. I certainly focused the majority of my time on the PC side when PS4 hadn't gotten all those updates. So to hear from you, and there's also a whole bunch of other people that I've heard from as well, that they're back and playing the game because of the PS4 update, that is a great thing. As for your suggestion about community interviews, I've certainly thought about having more people on the show, but I do enjoy just doing this myself, as weird as that sounds. There's a few selfish reasons why I do it, mainly because I don't need to schedule anybody. I don't need to make sure everybody's recording systems are working properly or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that this isn't a decent idea. And this is something that we used to do a lot back when we did Reachcast, which was way before PS2 on PS4. But we used to do outfit interviews all the time and get particular outfits on and do stuff like that and have them promote their outfit and just chat about what they like and stuff about PlanetSide 2. It was much easier to do when there were multiple of us on the show coordinating various things like that. That doesn't mean it doesn't have merit. What I'd actually like to do more than community interviews is I'd like to get the devs on this show a little bit more. And I think that might be something I might want to focus my efforts into a little bit more. I've been toying with the idea of reaching out to Rel, especially with the producer's note, or I'm sorry, not the producer's note, the lead designer's note that he put out last week, especially about the mandate system. And think about reaching out to him and seeing if he would come on the show again. Plus, there's also Paul, who I haven't had a chance to interview yet, that I'd really like to. And there's also Garrett, who I'd love to talk to, because I think he might have had a lot to do with this death cam that's been out there. But again, I need to get off my butt and reach out to these people and see about having them on. But other than that, I'm not against doing community interviews. But regardless, I do appreciate the email, and it does make me realize that I need to get off my butt and try to do a little bit more. But that's going to be it for this week's show. So how can you get in touch with me at the show? Obviously, your first stop should be my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. You can also email me, just like Survive7 did, at instantactionshow@gmail.com. Remember, if you email me, I'll read it and respond to it. You can also call me and leave me a voicemail at 347-4VM-4PS2. Those digits are 347-486-4772. And also, please follow the show on Twitter at InstActPodcast. Speaking of following the show on Twitter, I want to give a shout out to Shane. Shane, check your mailbox. Something is coming on Tuesday. But As cryptic as that is, in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button. Derringer out.
Oh my god, Derringer, please.